Again, welcome to this webinar, Setting Up Product Operations for Success. I'm actually quite passionate about the topic. I almost ended up a product operations manager instead of a product marketing manager. I was in like a team that was called the product consultants and product experts, which also involved a lot of like product operations things back in the day, like 4 years ago. Didn't call it product operations then. So I'm very interested also to hear our guests' opinion on how to set it up for success, actually. And with this, you're also more than welcome to introduce yourselves in a second. One more thing for our attendees. Obviously, this is a round table, which is meant to be interactive. While the experts do have an opinion, it's more than important to us that you can share your opinion on the chat. You ask your questions in the question box. We'll pick them up and try to include them into the conversation. For everybody asking, there is a recording of this webinar that will be delivered to your inbox. So yes, you can take notes, but you can also lean back and enjoy the discussion. Should anything go wrong, our team of moderators will be there for you in the chat. With this, Antonia, maybe you can introduce yourself, say who you are, why you're here, and then we'll hit it off with the first question after Diana and Dee and see where we're going.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Antonia. I'm originally from Switzerland with Italian background, lived a long time in Scotland, which is why I sound like this. Anyway, I'm now in Berlin, and I've been doing product ops officially for about 2 years now, unofficially ever since I started in tech, I think. And yeah, it's lovely to be here. Very excited.
I'll go next. So I'm Diana. I'm originally from Colombia, South America, which is why my name is pronounced Diana and not Diana. I'm coming to you from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. I've been living here for about 17 years, a big, proud Canadian. So in my current role, I am Director of Product Operations. And similar to Antonia, I've been doing product operations for about 2 years. So I'm currently with Ascent, and we're dedicated to helping complex manufacturers bring responsible products to the world. So whether it's electronics or medical devices or aerospace, our software provides a view of supply chain sustainability from environmental regulations through to human rights concerns. We actually were the first North American software company to achieve both B Corp certification and advanced status with United Nations Global Compact. I'm really proud of the work that I do at Ascent in product operations and the work that Ascent does. And I'm incredibly excited to be speaking here with you all alongside incredible panel on setting product ops for success.
Awesome.
Hi there. Thanks, Diana. Thanks, Antonia. Great to meet you both here in person finally. And thank you to airfocus and the team for organizing this panel, because this is what our community needs more of, good discussions and good ideations. A little bit about me. My name is Dee Sethi. I'm originally from a tiny Middle Eastern country called Kuwait. A lot of you heard about it in the wrong sense through wars, etc. But trust me, it's all nice and peaceful over there now. I've been across the world in terms of education. I spent a lot of my time in the States on the West Coast. I guess that's where my product kind of like thinking was embedded during my university days. And then I kind of applied it mostly in the UK. So I moved to the UK in 2007, and I've been in London in the UK, so based here. And currently I work for a company called BP, British Petroleum. So we're not renowned for our product expertise, really. And I guess that's what my role comes in, to organize and coordinate that sort of product culture and outcomes-based thinking approach, rather than a little bit process-oriented, regulated approach that, especially oil and gas industries try to take. So I'm trying to break the mold here. It's super challenging, but also super fun. So thanks for having me here, guys.
Awesome. Welcome to you guys, and I'm gonna give you the first question right away. I don't know if you wanna like take it in turns or just pick each other up, but as product operations has, as a lot of things, has probably been around for decades, and we just rediscovered that it's like a thing in software and in tech, or in general around product management. But I'm wondering, what is your definition of what product operations does? Like, what is product operations for you?
Maybe I can go first because
Sure.
I've recently been thinking about this, and so the problem with product ops is that it's a lot of it depends, right? Like I think very broadly speaking, we can agree on we enable people to do their best work. But the question is, well, who is people, right? Is it purely PMs? Is it designers as well? Is it the entire R&D department? And what is work? Is it product management work? Is it communication work? Is it datafying how we do product? So I think for me, the sort of definition most of us can agree on is we enable people to do their best work. But beyond that, it's gonna get tricky.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Antonia. So I agree that product operations may have recently been rediscovered. However, I do consider that it's still a nascent function in a SaaS world, in SaaS companies. And while the puzzles that it aims to solve vary company by company, there is common pain felt across product companies, across product teams, and product operations can help alleviate some of that pain, which is why today this function is becoming ever so important and emerging so strong. So again, the pain that we feel within Ascent is not unique. The solutions that product operations team will put forward is to address specifically that. But agree with what Antonia said. And in our case, we work with 5 product teams, including product management, product engineering, product design, product support, and infrastructure. And we aim to be that connective tissue between the product organization and the rest of the organization.
Yeah, love that connective tissue, and love what Antonia said earlier as well. It's just more of the same, really. I would say when maybe around 25 years ago, when product was coming into its inception, it brought along with a promise, right? And let's assume that promise was to make lives easier for our customers, both external and internal, right? That's not the definition of promise, but let's just assume that, right? I think somewhere along the line that sort of viability was lost, right? Because of the way humans perform with each other in teams, the way humans communicate with each other, and the different lenses that anything big like products brings to our community and to organizations. So for me, it's just fulfilling that promise that was made 20 plus years ago. I think product ops is the enabler of that promise fulfillment, right? We say product management works. Let's prove that it works, and product ops helps in proving that viability of that promise. So there you go. Please don't quote me on that or anything, because people will, there's have a little signature, please, over there to sign it off.
So sorry, I have a question, Dee. From your response, it sounds like product operation is primary customers product management.
So the primary customer from a product ops perspective for me, and that's a very interesting question, Deanna, because I've kind of like thought about it quite a lot. Yes, it is the product people in our teams as an example, but I would say fundamentally, the outcome of what we're trying to do is still outreaching back to the customer. I fundamentally feel like there is a huge availability in terms of dissonance there's no disconnect between the final customer getting the outcome of the product, which is a great product, well designed, easy to use, et cetera, and what product ops enabled, to make that happen. So I would still say, and I know this is controversial, that for me, the customer touching the screen or you using the product is still my customer. I do know, however, that I guess that's where the different definitions come in, right? Like, no, it's the product teams, and that's about it. Not even the designers, not even the engineers. So in another word, I would say actually the whole organization, in a way, is my customer, and that organization performs for the end customer. So there you go. Bit of a cop-out response, I would say.
No, it's a great response.
There seems to be no general disagreement from what I can see from the chat. But since we now heard a definition, I'm interested from the audience who actually does have an established product operations function, as just explained, within their company. And there will be a little poll window popping up where you can select one of the boxes. And once we see the result, I'm also interested in the proliferation that you guys see in product operations. And like, is it something that a lot of, like in your personal perception, that a lot of people already do, that is still like nascent, like how, like the grade of maturity, that's what I'm interested in, right? Like, because it's, is it still very open, dynamic, or do we already have like a set path where it's going? But let's go with the poll first. Do we have a product operations function at airfocus? What is product operations? Okay, so a couple of people might still vote, but we already have like a preliminary result. So it looks like roughly half of people already have a product operations function, whereas the rest either doesn't have it, but maybe planning it. I would have said, like, without seeing the data, that would have been my expectation. Something around these lines of like, yeah, it's not yet a majority that has it, and even usually not a big majority anyways. But does it in some way correlate to your guys' experience? I'm wondering.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that it's the 46%. I would have assumed it was lower. I think what we're seeing, especially this year, so I like when I started in product ops, like literally the only articles you could find was like, what is product ops? And that's it, right? So now in this past year, we've kind of passed that point. Now people are talking about it at least, and you get sort of the first, experts emerging. But what I'm seeing now is a lot of companies are starting to consider it. Now the question we see most often is, when do I need product ops, or do I need product ops? So it's actually interesting. I would have assumed it was less.
Yeah, I'll speak a little bit about, I'll answer this question. So I'm actually really lucky. I came into my current organization, Ascend, and there was an established product operations function. However, it lived under product management, and our CPO decided around the same time that I came in, or just before, that it should sit as its own independent function beside the rest of the product teams. Again, product management, engineering, design, support, and infrastructure. And our mandate is to support, find friction in the day-to-day of these teams, and co-create solutions to address and alleviate some of that pain, as well as across the organization. The challenge that I've had is I've come into a team that is fairly project management minded and focused. And so where I've spent the last couple months is shifting that mindset to more of an operationally minded and how we work. And so, but to answer the question that Antonia just threw out there, when is it a good time? As soon as you have one product manager, one engineering person, one designer, one customer success person, and one product marketing manager, it's time to get product operations involved.
Can I disagree to that?
Of course.
I think it heavily depends on how much pain you're willing to tolerate, right? Like the thing that I typically ask was, how painful is it being a product person in your organization? Are you okay with that pain? And if not, who is taking that on, right? Because product ops work has always existed. We're not creating new work. We're just extracting it into a separate function, right? But previously, this was done by product leaders, by maybe really engaged individual contributors. And now we're just wrapping that up into one person, one team, one department. But it's not even necessarily about, is this going to make us better? But it's about, what can you get out of it as a company? If you're completely fine being quote unquote mediocre, right? Then sure, keep going. Like you don't need product ops necessarily. Honestly, you don't even need to be product led to be successful necessarily. It's all about the trade-off and where do you want to go as a company and what are you willing to live with?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just in response to that, I agree it's about the pain that you're willing to tolerate, but that means we want to avoid the pain. So if I were speaking to a startup, I would say, don't wait until you have pain to create product operations, establish it from the beginning, because again, we're here to create those processes and best practices. So the roles that I mentioned, and there's many more, have a path forward to success. Let's call it access to right data, access to right tools, access to right processes. But you're right, in a larger, more established organization, it is, I agree with your position, Antonia, absolutely. Dee, go ahead. I think I cut you off.
No, please. This is very interesting because I'm here on this panel not as an expert and not in any panel, by the way, because I'm kind of fearful of the word expert. So when I was in my 20s, for example, I was very focused on being the best in a particular niche or field, product management as an example, and to me, I think that led me down a path of siloization of thought, whereby I wasn't able to listen to other people and create a more cohesive picture as a result of that. So to me, this panel is a great example of that holistic, collaborative way of thinking. So I'm really loving this. So from that sort of lifelong learning pact that I've made with myself, I want to induce that in product ops community as well, because to your concerns, Antonia, earlier about the number being much higher in terms of, wow, 46%, that's huge, right? That to me is that wildfire approach that it's called shiny object syndrome, right? So people hear about something, oh my God, product management was 20 years ago, product ops is so today, for example, and let's introduce that in the company. So Deanna, to your point around, hey, if project management and products are kind of like merged together, then product ops will be the differentiator to make it better and more segmented, right? So I completely take your points here, but I feel like we should be careful as a community in terms of what we want to achieve. And I think the key thing for us as a community should be to listen, right? And I know, Antonia, you made that point of how much pain, right? If we really, really keep an attentive and open mind in terms of listening to our product colleagues, thereby listening to the customer because they're custodians of the customers, right? Our product teams, then suddenly I become much more aware of what the problems are and what kind of mechanisms we need to navigate through that. And that mechanism, by the way, may not be product ops all the time. It could be in certain occasions, but in other occasions, it might just be lean, or it might be process standardization, or it might be, hey, you guys use Teams more. I don't know, whatever, right? So I think it's really important that product ops doesn't become an industry, but it really becomes an organized, almost like a culture and organized around 3 or 4 guiding principles. By the way, a problem for me today is I don't know what those guiding principles are. Every company makes it up on its own, which is not a bad thing per se, but I think you guys already made the point. Articles are not enough. We need more books out there to explain what product ops could be from some thought leaders in the industry. So, that's my 2 takes on that particular piece.
It's very interesting. I want to zoom in a little bit on this topic of like, how do I see that I need it? Like the pain, basically, like what if I look at my organization right now at the processes, at the people, like what would be typical indications of me, like, yeah, now it's time to either have like a dedicated team or a dedicated person, or to like scale this team to have more, to differentiate the functions basically within the product ops team. There's also a couple of questions around this in our question section. So maybe you can expand a little bit on this, like what will I see when I need a product operations function, or when I need to scale my product operations function within my company?
I think something that I tend to look at is what do the leaders concern themselves with. And there is a tipping point where product leaders suddenly become very tactical and almost exclusively tactical. And in turn, that makes them miss out on opportunities to think about the long-term strategy. It makes them miss out on coaching and developing their people. And suddenly they're more worried about, I need to get this report done by the end of the week, like stuff that in the like grand scheme of thing, like doesn't matter. Stuff that actually stops them from being a great product leader. I think for me, that's the sort of first indication where it goes, oh, you don't have time to do the job you need to do. You don't have time to lead us all into the same direction, because you're the only person that picks this sort of work up?
So I would add to that, when the teams aren't able to focus on a specific plan, when they have questions about processes because there is a lack of processes, whenever the customer facing teams are not getting what they need from the product organization, for example, the right level of enablement, training, documentation, information management, all of those are big topics right now happening in my world. That's when it's time to consider breaking that responsibility away from the product leadership and establishing it as its own thing. Because at the end of the day, and I don't say this enough, but when I come to the table with the customer-facing teams or with product marketing, I'm not there to represent the product organization. I want to be a neutral third party. And similar to what Dee mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, we're all working towards not only enhancing the product experience, but with the end goal to drive customer happiness. So that's what I would say is driving that need to bring in product operations.
Yeah, really great points there. And I think, Antonia, with your sort of pain point, kind of like resolution in terms of listening, and in terms of Deanna, your view around, product experience being for the customer as an example. To me, I'll just resonate with that. But I would say, Johannes, to your question around when will you know that product ops is needed in the organization, right? I would say utilize your human voice, right? When we say voice of customer, when we capture product information, right? What is the internal voice saying over here, right? And don't get me wrong, it will be very chaotic because it will be very emotive, as an example. We as product ops need to identify what is good data from this chaotic feedback or Microsoft Forms or Survey Monkeys that are going on, right? Have more in-depth sessions with people on the front line, and I should stop saying those words. They're not on the front line. We all are. We all are on the front line for the customer. But what I mean is people who communicate with customers on a day-to-day basis, speak to them a lot more to understand what their priorities are and where they're missing the mark. And to Antonia and Deanna's point earlier, if they're missing the mark quite often, then suddenly there is a need to have a division or a department that can overlook and oversee and make it a better sort of collaborative effort between the two teams, rather than, hey, this is the product team and this is what we're working for the customer, right? That's our only job. I would also say when product management started 20 years ago, product ops was a subsection of the job description anyways, as in standardize your work, use great tech tooling, put your strategy visually, et cetera, like show your work and all that stuff. Where did all of that go missing? And the human drama and the chaos that happens through multiple meetings, remote working and COVID, and numerous other interjections, then suddenly we come to a place where something is needed. So to your question, Johannes, I think what that something is driven by a human voice, which is carefully captured, assessed, and listened to, basically. So that would be my response to that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, interesting. Let's make it one level more tangible, since a lot of people have been asking about this as well, is like, what typically is within product ops? Like, what is product ops actually doing? Like, when you look at a regular day, every day is different. We all know this, right? No day is the same. But generally, like, what's the bucket of tasks that a product operations team typically has? Because I think this also makes the whole topic of, like, why is it necessary? When is it valuable? Graspable, basically, right? So maybe you can talk a little bit about, like, a typical, I'm going to say structures, positions, like areas of responsibility. These are obviously going to differentiate the more the organization grows, but maybe you can talk about a little bit of the general pattern of how product operations starts growing within an organization.
Antonia, oh, sorry.
I've been going first this entire time, so I was like,
yes.
Okay,
it's like, so Johannes, like, if you could direct the question to the panelists directly, just at the start, that'd be.
I'd like to know, what are some of the roles and responsibilities in a typical product operation?
In the UK, we say, I put my oar in over there. That's what I just did. I apologize. So I think how Antonia started the conversation earlier, right? But it depends, right? So I'll use this example as a disclaimer. Please don't use this as a standard approach because everyone's approach is going to be different, right? So a typical day would look like a stand-up meeting with my product guys, with my team, my community, and not only find out about how they fared during the week in terms of outcomes related work and processes, but also what did they not like during the week? That's really important to me. So I take the pulse of the community internally, and I actually publish that pulse with the leadership team as an example, right? Which is quite controversial because the leaders are like, "What? This is a part of their role. How does it even matter to me?" Right? It's really important that I'm the bridge in terms of that communication. I also believe that a lot of time in my work, I work solely or mostly on process standardization and communication. But there is another side of product ops, which is, at least in BP, it's not utilized because, as I said earlier, I'm a learner. I'm not an expert in anything, but that's data and analytics. So what kind of product experimentation is going on? How is the AP testing parameters being followed? How do you validate the data that comes out? I truly feel like that specialization is much needed in product ops, which today is a little bit cumbersome to come across, right? So I'm trying to build a dual track approach where you have process standardization as one, community of practice, and the other community of practice is analytics, experimentation, and data, essentially, right? And a combination of the two is what makes product ops tick in the organization. So back to the question of the day, the other meetings are all about setting up this particular process of making this dual track approach work. There is also a meeting where we call everyday fun. I do know that teams have weekly meetings where they have fun. No, we should have fun every day, right? So there's literally 15 minutes. Someone needs to come up with a game and we find out a way that we communicate better remotely, because I feel a lot of our engagement today in today's world is happening on a remote environment, right? So not only do we need to make product ops or product teams work in a particular way, we have to do that remotely. So how do we find out how people work? How do they culturally respond on remote calls, etc.? So I'm doing a lot of research and investigation in terms of building a remote first culture. So to your point, again, very diverse response in terms of should that be product ops that should be doing it? And I would say in BP, that's how we do it. Oh, one last thing, sorry. Product ops, I feel, and this is what I'm telling my leadership team to commit to. Product ops is helping redesign teams and how they work as a part of organization design, right? Now, one might question, hey, usually it's HR that's responsible for that thing. Actually, taking the pulse of the community, we know how teams correspond with each other. To me, an org chart is an artifact of the past. It shouldn't exist anymore. I know, another controversial view. So what does product ops do in terms of designing for better work is a question that I have. So I'm exploring a lot of that in my day-to-day role as well. So again, that's my how does my day look like product ops response.
Very fascinating. That's like human focus. Cool.
Yeah, very much so.
You're a busy guy, Dee. I love it. It's very familiar to what some of my product operations managers' day looks like. I'll quickly share my response. So I'll share it with another perspective. So we are responsible. We have 4 focus areas that product operations is responsible for. The first one, product operational rhythm. So this is organizing of the product events, such as the quarterly product information sessions, or as well as the ongoing like product process management, such as facilitating planning sessions, etc. The second bucket is product enablement. So onboarding onto the product organization, again, whether you're product manager, engineer, or designer, or QA manager, all of that goes through product operations, as well as we're responsible for, in that bucket, cross-functional product knowledge and training across the organization. The third bucket is product operational excellence. So further to what Dee was saying, bringing in those qualitative and quantitative insights into the product org to enable us to make data-driven decisions, as well as looking at the product life cycle and seeing where do we need more understanding or clarification for the teams, ironing out who's responsible for what, where do we document, where do we store the documents, etc. And then finally, product enablement and collaboration. So this is looking at the end-to-end product communication strategy, whether it's release notes or quarterly information sessions, or Pendo and communicating through Pendo to our customers. And then finally, again, the product information management. But very much what you described, Dee, is how our team members work. It's working daily, collaborating, co-creating, documenting, iterating, showcasing, and then implementing change management and going back and making things better incrementally.
Yeah, I think very similar here as well. We do actually have a lot of consensus when it comes down to the nitty-gritty. I think for me, I put a big focus on communication. How do we communicate within product and engineering? How do we communicate to the rest of the organization? Sometimes, how do we communicate to the rest of the world, right? And like product ops can go through so many different levels as well. Like one day I'll be running user interviews with some product managers because I'm looking at maybe needing to introduce a new tool and I want to know exactly what the problem we're trying to solve is. The other day, I might be working with directors or senior leadership to help them facilitate an OKR discussion for the upcoming quarter or the upcoming year. It's such a special role because it is, you can zoom in and zoom out, and it's also very broad. Right. And I think that's what makes it so great, but that's why it's also so different every day. And it's so different in so many different companies.
It's fascinating. Sorry, Johannes, really apologies. I had this question I wanted to ask my fellow panelists here. So, guys, when, say, Agile came out, right, all those years ago in 2000 or 2001, and then suddenly DevOps came out in, 2010s as an example. So I've always been thinking why the engineering part of information technology, right, has the ability to standardize and create a body of work which is renowned all across the world. But us as a product community, and I use us as a very broad brushstroke, by the way, right, we've found it hard to standardize and target what exactly are and I know the product school, et cetera, are doing something around that, right? But I feel like we have the responsibility to standardize, because initially when we standardize, then later on it's just easier for folks to adopt, as an example. Because of our very broad remit, I think it's our responsibility, and maybe airfocus guys, I'm kind of thinking out probably a product ops pack or something where folks can just come in, read, and understand a little bit more, and we can start forming that DevOps / product ops community, essentially. So that was my question, really. Do you feel why we weren't able to do that in the product sort of world, or not that well?
I feel like there is a little bit of a danger here with standardization specifically. I think what we're looking for and lacking is a manifesto, essentially, much like the Agile Manifesto was when it first came out. And a lot of that still holds very true. But we have Frankensteined that manifesto into things like Scrum. And those two things don't match up.
The Agile consultants just toppled over.
So I'm just a little bit worried when we start talking about, standardization, or honestly, I'm even relatively skeptical when we start talking about product ops courses, because it's so highly individualized. What we need are guidelines that are really more on a human level, right? People over processes. I feel like that's the sort of level we need to agree on.
Yeah. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Antonia. this thing about guiding principles. So right now I am working and getting in unifying the designers and the engineers with the product managers using the same tool, instead of the product managers using another tool for their road mapping. Let's unify everyone into one. So it's starting with what is the pain, what are the puzzles that we're addressing, what is the intended outcome. With those guiding principles, we want to simplify, we want to unify teams, and that will make it easier for you to make decisions and to sell the idea and the why, and communicate that why across the organization.
It's super interesting. I mean, I'm a product marketer by trade nowadays, and this discussion is also happening for product marketing, right? Like, what is the essential value that product marketing delivers over a general marketing manager, or a product manager who's just very good at communicating, for example? A good storytelling product manager, why do I need a product marketing manager? And I think there's also an interesting question around what is the one thing that only product operations can do? What's the thing that the other function cannot deliver at all? And obviously the one thing is time-based reasons, right? A product manager eventually will not be able to do all of these jobs. They just need someone who's specialized in just what you guys also explained, right? But maybe there is a common denominator for these topics that typically get outsourced from a product manager towards a product operations manager. And I'm interested if you have a sentence, this one sentence that would summarize this core purpose of product operations, from which then obviously I can go and select the tools, select the tasks, select the people, select the different responsibilities. Yeah, big question, but I need to pick someone, right? Diana, you get to go first.
Okay, well, in one sentence it would be difficult, but I would say it is that connective tissue, right? So to elaborate, if I'm a product manager, I'm oftentimes focused on a piece of the broader product experience, right? I'm focused on a product area. And similar to a product marketing manager, they're focused on getting the message out to customers and enabling, in some cases, doing the sales enablement. What product operations can do, and what neither of those two teams own, is we have that holistic view, assuming that it's a central function and not in working within product pods. We can look at all of the voice of the user channels, whether it's coming in internally from our solution consultants or our customer success or our sales team, or externally directly from customers. Consolidate all of that, look at and identify what those big themes are. We can then work with marketing to add the layer of data, revenue opportunity, et cetera, and then package those recommendations to product leadership and say, this is a consolidated holistic view, and this is what our recommendation says. I don't see any other team doing that holistically across the entire product organization, across all of our customer segments. But again, that's very specific to the organization. So I'm curious to hear from somebody else.
I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. So I've had several definitions I've used in the past of sort of what is product ops mission. First one was making PM's lives easier, which is wrong. Second one was removing barriers, which is somewhat true, but doesn't show the whole story. I think now I've come to building an effective product organization. And I feel like people will immediately go, wait, isn't that the CPO's thing? Isn't that product leadership, right? Isn't that HR? You can't. And true, product ops alone won't succeed, right? But ultimately, that's what we want to do. That's what our mission is building an effective product organization. And again, what that looks like concretely for your specific company will differ wildly.
Super cool. Yeah, super diverse responses, which I expect from our little community here, really. I concur with both your outcomes-based approach there. I think for me, if you ask me as a sentence, what is the one thing, right? Very controversial again, like Antonia said. I would say, how do we build a culture where just good work is done, right? How do we build that culture where good work is done? And a sub-outcome of that would be what is the human innovation that's required for the next 10 to 20 years by which we can do better work, right? So I use the word human innovation because you guys already know by now I'm all about the people, right? So for me, fundamentally, there is a fine line between what product teams do internally and what HR should be doing a little bit more of, because to me, HR is stuck in a little bit of a ways of, and forgive me for any HR enthusiasts on the call here, but I feel like, onboarding, process standardization, hiring, recruitment, and firing. That's what seems like the HR view. And I really, really want the HR team to be innovative in how they actually think about the human, right? I won't even use the word resources here. So for me, product ops is the ambassador division in the organization, which can qualify human innovation. That's what I feel. I'm trying to do that in BP. I'm losing every day, but I love it still because I'll continue fighting this fight.
Honorable.
I've got scars.
Don't we all?
All over my body. Yeah, I think for me it's very easy to compare to product marketing and to product management, right? That this whole notion of like go to market usually is somewhere at the core for product marketing, and I think this an effective product organization could become also the core for product operations, like or some wording version of this, right? But because I think that there is this core that I've also seen where this is kind of wobbling around, right? Like maybe it's more people focused, maybe it's more tool focused, maybe it's more like data focused, but like it's still around the spot of like this whole product teams organization wants to move forward faster and something is holding them back, right? And like this one person or this team can come in and be like, hey, here, let us help you, let us fix this for you or make it better. Let us give you some ideas because we have a different view or we have more time to focus on this. However, there might be something that they shouldn't do, which is also a question on our questions box, which is like, what is something that product operations shouldn't do in order to make the product organization move forward faster? Like, what are tasks that like guys want from you? Then you're like, no, please go and ask the product marketing manager about this.
Make product decisions. No, like that's where the product and product ops stops. We're not here to make product decisions. We're here to facilitate that work, right? We're here to enable people and give them the mandate, but we ultimately should not have any say or stake in that. And it doesn't matter how good of a PM we used to be in the past.
We can facilitate those decisions by bringing those qualitative, quantitative insights, by organizing the voice of the user channels through so many things. But I agree 1,000%. We do not make product decisions.
Mm-hmm. I'll just sort of align to that, but I'll kind of branch out into the controversial territory. So remember when we started off as product managers, there was this term, and really bad term, product manager is the CEO of their particular product area or whatever that is, right? As a result of that, I've been indoctrinated not to say no to anything, to my own peril, right? Because when I don't say no to anything, I become disorganized and chaotic, right? So to your question, Johannes, I will not say no to anything right now because to me, product ops still isn't well defined enough in the industry to then warrant that no. Do you see what I'm saying here? Like, how can I be the best person to say, actually, you know what, guys, this is not my role and responsibility. Please ask Team X. I wouldn't be able to do that. What I will do is I'll approach Team X and ask them, hey, you guys, is this what you do? Can I put this on the product ops wiki so that Team Y can come in and learn a little bit more about it, right? So I'll still enable that function that Deanna is talking about. And I completely agree, Antonia. I'm still not making the product decision, by the way. I'm just enabling that decision to happen. So I will never say no to anything. So product ops will still be a facilitator of everything product, but I completely understand there needs to be some rules and boundaries. I don't know we're there yet in terms of what those boundaries and that scope of work is yet. So, and by the way, I don't know, I can't see the chat over here, but there was this question about PMO function, the project management office support function. We're definitely not that. So if someone comes to me with support around sort of frequency, project management, financials, etc., I would say I would encourage them to go to the PMO team, because I'm not the expert on that, because some people confuse us with the project management office function, right? We're definitely not that. So, and that's why we need a little bit more clarity and guidelines around what product ops is. We can do that in the company, but I want that wider in the community as well.
Dee, I hope you do identify your focus areas and you get to a point where you're able to say no. We're a team of 7 product operations people at the company where I am. We say no, and I encourage my team to say no often, because it's so clear what we want to accomplish. We have a very well-established 2023 roadmap. Just yesterday, somebody came to me with a request that I wanted to understand more their thought process as to why they thought something belonged with product operations. And it was through my questions that they were like, oh, you're right, this doesn't belong in product ops. But product ops has been this dumping ground for so long for stuff that nobody else wants to do. It made no sense, the request they came to me with. And so I understand and recognize that over time, people will get used to asking themselves that question to arrive at the right, but it's going to take time. But we have very well established focus areas, responsibilities. If it falls outside of that, the answer is no. Great idea, but no.
I just have a very specific thing. Oh, so, yeah, no, Dee.
No, please. I was just going to say I'm the only product delivery guy in my massive organization, so you can understand why there is this skepticism to be, it's not unhelpful, but there is this way forward and how we create that way forward. But completely take your point. I do think we should define our areas better so that folks don't bring in things that are not relevant to product ops, for sure.
I just, like, when you were talking about the project management office, I felt like the one thing I never really thought about is if product operations could even be responsible for product budgeting. Like this whole part of like reporting towards the finance department in like what has been like R&D, what has been like maintenance, like this I want to say a little bit annoying part about product management that like does create value for the business, obviously, because you need to do proper budgeting and reporting, but and also ends up with like just the person that needs to do it. So somebody needs to go through like the stuff that has been built and be like, okay, so this is this. How do you? I know it's very specific, but like, how do you feel about this, Antonia?
I think it depends. So sorry. I know, I'm very sorry. Right. To give you a little background, so I'm the only ops person, and I do operations for the entire product and engineering department. So I have to have this broad view. Actually, I have to be involved with like resource management and allocation and helping our senior leaders to not get, not drown in this kind of administrative, sometimes boring, sometimes not fun work. But this is all part of operationalizing the function. It's about operationalizing how we run product and engineering. I think it depends. If you have another function that can take it, then, give it to them. Because it's not the most riveting thing, but ultimately I'm maybe a little bit more on Dee's side rather than Diana's about if something needs to be done, just do it. Right. I'm a little bit, and I see the value in, saying no more often, because I do sometimes also drown and stuff. I think that's the flip side of it. But to a certain extent, if this is something you have identified that the company needs to have or needs to do, and maybe you're the only person that can take it on in this particular moment, then just do it.
I mean, I'll clarify. We listen to all ideas and we'll ask clarifying questions. And if you're coming to me with pain that is pervasive, then yes, we will reprioritize and put it at the top. But we don't want to get distracted.
Sure. But that's a luxury, I'd wager. I think most people in product ops are teams of one.
Yes.
It's super interesting you say that, Diana, because that's exactly the kind of journey I took with companies that have more product ops managers, as an example, and they all bring in different ways of doing product ops management as well. So I can see both of your pain points here in terms of, do we say no to no one here versus we have to be very careful in terms of what we're saying. I think to your question, Johannes, around, how do we help with, there's this framework that, and then, by the way, I use the word framework very loosely here. I did some reading on this around what exactly manifests as a good meeting, a value-added meeting, and what manifests as non-value add, right? There's literally value, no value, right? However, there's a third triage, which is, we call it the LNO framework. It's based on Shreyash Doshi. He's a PM on Twitter. He's really big. And one of the things that he said was there are high leverage tasks, there are neutral tasks, and there are overhead tasks. So high leverage tasks is essentially, Diana and Antonia, for the customer, this is coming out, this is an outcome, this is a deliverable, we're going to make money, the customer is going to be super excited about this, excellent. That's my high leverage task. Neutral task is, I need to attend this team stand-up as an example, and in that team stand-up, I need to know what my tasks are, my Kanban, to-do, in progress, blocked, etc. Right? It's neutral. It's enabling me to do high leverage tasks. And finally, Johannes, you're talking about O, which is finances, admin, Excel spreadsheets that we need to fill in for other teams, standardized, rigorous approach. Please do X, Y, Z, right? They interrupt my flow of work. And as a product-induced customer, which is my internal product manager, I want them to be in a state of flow each day, every day, right? I don't want them to get interruptions. So the very first thing I did was, guys, what is your non-value added tasks? Please let me know so that I can coordinate with the right teams in order to automate them, make them more interactive for you, or make them just easy to fill in, right? Let's not waste time doing that. I completely understand it's that team's responsibility and they need to do that task, right? But for me as a product guy, my customer is being blocked from good value because I'm doing all of the overhead tasks. So I want to reduce the overhead tasks as a product ops person, and that's why I'm listening to the voice of my product manager and prioritizing that work. So I want to take away that pain from them. How do I do that? Magic. I'm joking. Just by listening.
The power of will.
Yes.
Okay, we have a last lightning round before we close this round up due to time not issues, but due to agreed upon time that we had in the beginning. Each of you gets to name their favorite tools, the tools that you cannot live without in your product operations to reality. And this list can include Slack, Teams, and email if you wish to, or the telephone. But just from the top of your head, like the 3 tools, or 4, possibly 5, but maybe 3. The 3 tools you cannot live without as a product operations manager. Before we do say goodbye. Oh, I need to pick someone. Sorry. I pick you, Diana.
Okay. So to no one's surprise, probably like Pendo, or a product analytics tool. That is, to me, the cornerstone of success of a great product operations function. In my case, for the last 2 companies, Pendo. The other one is Jira, Advanced Roadmaps. I'm a huge fan. I use Advanced Roadmaps day to day. And then the entire G Suite. So, yeah, that, I mean, I say, remember, keep it simple and unify teams.
Cool, thanks.
I mean,
Dee.
I think.
Oh, Antonia, so yeah, it's fine.
Sorry. I think for me to be successful, I need my notebook, I need Slack, and I need video conferencing. Because it's literally, I come from product management. My first thing is finding out what the problem is.
Super interesting. Yeah. For me, there's 3 tools, Johannes, because for me, that visualization of product strategy is super important. So I would actually say I've used airfocus in the past, probably for a couple of years in an organization. And my cat, by the way, she agrees as well. She just, to me, what I really like is that simplicity of connection between the product strategy and what we're doing on our day-to-day work. So that was really awesome with airfocus. I, however, don't use airfocus in BP, but I use it for my personal use. So that's what I'm trying to encourage BP to look at that product strategy angle. The other tool that I use, it's called ClickUp. ClickUp for me is that one-stop Basecamp. I know Basecamp is another tool, but it's literally my Basecamp for Wikipedia, for task management, and for getting those little itty-bitty prioritization protocols up and ready and running. So ClickUp and airfocus would be my recommended tools. Yeah.
Thanks for the shout out. I wasn't even looking for, I wasn't even fishing for compliments. But thanks.
No, I'm just saying that's the truth.
Definitely
I've used a lot of.
range.
I have used a lot of road mapping software, and airfocus is for me still the simplest one and the easiest one to communicate.
Thanks. One out of 3 panelists will receive their payment after this webinar.
You know my account details. No, I'm just joking.
Okay, cool. With this, thank you very much for sharing your expertise. I'm just assuming people can find you on LinkedIn or Twitter or both and hit you up with questions. Thanks for building a product operations function overall and contributing to the community. Yeah, I learned a lot. I had an aha moment around the human-centric product operations and about this core purpose of POP. It's my personal abbreviation for product operations, but you may or may not go with it.
Love it.
Thanks. Have a nice evening or afternoon, depending on your time zones.
And you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.